Arcades. Once they were vibrant hubs of community and competition, today, they're remembered primarily for their nostalgia. Street Fighter, Galaga, Tekken, Pac-Man, these iconic games are etched into the memories of those who grew up in the golden age of arcades from the 1970s all the way up to the 1990s. If you were born after their peak in the early 80s or later in the 2000s, when arcades and public spaces began to decline, you'll still recognize the symbolic allure of the arcade cabinet. See, arcades, like Pokemon cards, Game Boys, and Tamagotchi handhelds, are relics of their time. They are totems of nostalgia, tangible artifacts that transport people back to an era long gone. When products fade from the mainstream, discontinued by low sales or rendered obsolete by advancing technology, they often develop a cult following. Well-made devices in particular have a way of sticking around in our imaginations. Today in 2024, you can still find thriving forums where people post about the original PSP from 2004 and the final iPod Classic from 2009. These clunky, ingenious devices continue to hold value among collectors, not just for their functionality, but for what they represent, a slice of time when technology was durable, tactile, stylish, and functional.
Realities are just what happens if you're really brutal to your opponent. You get an opponent, you can rip off his head or something like that.
Sounds like a pretty thrilling game, and this is the kind of violence that critics are pretty worried about.
Arcades have followed a similar path. While the traditional mall arcades of the 80s and 90s have largely disappeared, their spirit lives on. Collectors still hunt for vintage arcade cabinets, and companies like Arcade 1UP produce officially licensed replicas for nostalgic gamers. Barcades, combining drinking with classic games, have become a cultural phenomenon in the US for years, while arcade cabinets still make appearances at trade shows, conventions, and even fighting game tournaments. For those with a passion for retro gaming, arcades are far from dead. But the original arcades, as they existed in the 90s, bustling, communal spaces, are a thing of the past, a fading memory of a public shared experience now replaced by something quieter and more private. In fact, the arcades and shopping malls that house them are mostly abandoned in the United States. Yes, the mass adoption of home consoles had a lot to do with that abandonment of arcades, but even more significant was the rise of online shopping and the impact of home computers. People began shopping less in stores, opting instead for deals in communities online.
Expensive software. Get ready to write down a phone number and watch this. CompuServe combines the power of your computer with the convenience of your telephone to bring you hundreds of online services, like a complete set of encyclopedias and the AP Newswire. It helps you decide on investments, bank, make airline reservations, and shop in the electronic mall. It connects you with other computer owners and offers games that pit you against opponents around the country. You get all this and more, and it's as simple as making a local phone call. To get online with CompuServe and over 500,000 people throughout North America, see your local computer store or call 1-800-522-4477 for a free informative brochure about CompuServe. Call now to get the most out of your computer.
As powerhouses like Amazon grew, malls faced additional pressures such as the rise of big box retailers like Costco and Walmart, the oversaturation of malls in suburban areas, the decline of department stores like Sears and Macy's, and the shrinking middle class. Changing consumer preferences also played a role, with people prioritizing experiences over material goods and opting for fast fashion or discount retailers over traditional mall stores. High maintenance costs, declining foot traffic, and outdated mall designs further accelerated the decline, leaving many malls abandoned and struggling to adapt to these economic and cultural shifts. By the late 1990s, home cinema systems were becoming more affordable and high quality, with the transition from VHS to DVDs in 1996 marking a major leap. By the early 2000s, flat-screen TVs became widely accessible, offering an immersive viewing experience right in the living room. At the same time, home consoles outpaced arcade machines in both power and accessibility, while personal computers and the internet further enhanced entertainment and shopping convenience. Remember when having cable with 200 channels felt revolutionary, or when pausing live TV seemed groundbreaking?
At the movies. but you can experience it at home. Not to mention, you can watch it in widescreen, listen to audio commentary, choose from features like director's notes, behind-the-scenes footage, trailers.
This, in turn, affected the arcade.
Watch a movie right on your computer.
Malls were once cultural hubs. If we go back, we can see that malls showcased cutting-edge technology and entertainment. Cinemas, shopping, arcades. But as technology advanced, the appeal of these spaces began to fade. With this level of technological power at home, earned through hard work and investment, many people began to ask themselves, why spend more money going to the mall and feeding coins into arcade machines? For most, the choice was clear. Slowly, American society transitioned from an open public experience to one centered on convenience
Here's
and the
something that's going to
home.
make a lot of changes. A program called Atari Writer. It turns any Atari computer system into a word processor.
All men are created equal.
Fast fashion, streaming services, and powerful home technology replaced the once thriving malls and arcades, reflecting a cultural shift toward speed, accessibility, comfort, and isolation. The rise of the internet laid the groundwork for a generation increasingly immersed in their phones and video games, often retreating into their own worlds with little interest in the communal spaces of the past. This marked a profound shift from vibrant, open public spaces where arcade machines once stood as monoliths and totems of shared culture, to the slow decay and eventual abandonment of those spaces. Where we all once convened under the huge roof of American malls, this gave way to the smaller, private roofs of home and apartments, where people plugged into their computers and connected with each other across the globe. The communal act of gathering at a central hub to connect face-to-face was replaced by the convenience of digital connections, isolating individuals while expanding their reach beyond physical boundaries. The public shared experience faded, replaced by an isolated virtual one. This cultural shift de-emphasized the importance of the body and its connection to architecture and physical interaction with others, replacing it with a focus on the mind and its virtual, almost telepathic relationship with other minds across the globe, facilitated by the internet. The evolution from physical activity to digital connection is, in many ways, the story of the modern American mall, a transition from tangible, shared spaces to intangible global networks. With the de-emphasis on the casual strolling that malls allowed, society transitioned into intentional, high-speed information sharing facilitated by our new search engine society. It was less about wandering and discovering and more about knowing and searching. This shift mirrors a larger societal trend that French theorist Paul Virilio began exploring in his 1980 book, The Aesthetics of Disappearance. Virilio argues that our increasing reliance on speed and technology has fundamentally altered our perception of time, space, and even our own bodies. As we accelerate, the world around us becomes a blur, a series of fleeting images that are difficult to grasp or retain. This, in turn, disrupts our memories, making them fragmented, unreliable, and increasingly indistinguishable from the constant flow of information we encounter daily. Virilio uses the term pycnolepsy to describe the small lapses in time we experience without realizing it. In The Aesthetics of Disappearance, he writes, "For the pycnoleptic, nothing really happened. The missing time never existed. Each crisis, without realizing it, a little of his or her life simply escaped." This sense of missing time creates a gap between our lived experiences and our ability to recall them, making our memories feel hazy, uncertain, and incomplete. As Virilio suggests, the faster we move, the less we are able to truly see and experience the world around us, and the more our memories fade into a fog of fleeting impressions. This explains the perceived indifference among younger generations regarding finding meaning in life and society. They seem apathetic, but they're simply overwhelmed by the constant bombardment of information. This speed-driven society where information is shared and processed at breakneck rates led to a kind of paralysis through technology. People lose the ability to make meaningful choices, trapped in a cycle of constant acceleration. Virilio sees technology as both a driver and a symptom of this acceleration. He warns of our growing dependence on vision machines, technologies that mediate and distort our perception of the world, arguing that we are increasingly living in a world of simulations, mediated by screens and digital networks. The present moment becomes a forgotten artifact, the past a liminal abandoned dream, and the future a projection endlessly predicted by algorithms. As society continues to grapple with the overwhelming acceleration of information, young people have increasingly turned to video games, not just for escaping, but for as a way to make sense of the world around them. For author and game designer Jane McGonigal, games are more than entertainment. They are tools for finding meaning in the often chaotic reality. In her book, Reality is Broken, McGonigal asks, "Imagine a near future in which most of the real world works like a game. But is it even possible to create this future? Would it be a reality we would be happier to live in? Would it make the world a better place?" For many, games resonate so deeply because they provide something the real world increasingly struggles to offer: clarity. In a world where the rules are ambiguous and the pace is unrelenting, games allow us to slow down, focus, and operate within a framework where the variables are clear, the objectives are defined, and the boundaries are flexible yet structured. Within this controlled environment, players can experiment, learn, and collaborate more effectively, oftentimes than in the chaotic, fragmented spaces of modern life. Games help us build relationships with others who share a common understanding of the rules and roles within the virtual space. They offer a way to practice navigating systems and making decisions in an environment where success and failure are more tangible and immediate. As McGonigal suggests, games are microcosms of the broader universe distilled into more manageable, meaningful experiences. They create a sense of purpose and progress, which is increasingly difficult to find in our speed-driven, algorithm-controlled reality. Because young people cannot make sense out of the reality, or the so-called reality, they have to go towards something that they can make more sense out of, and this is why they go towards games. In games, the stream of information is focused, objectives are often clear, and communication is simplified, with everyone willingly engaged in the same shared environment and goals. Unlike the decayed vacant spaces of abandoned malls and other public spaces, the privatized virtual spaces of games feel alive, dynamic, and real. The virtual world now feels more real than the liminal vacancy of forgotten memory. They are spaces where success is achievable, relationships are meaningful, and the world itself makes sense, even if only for a while. This shift raises profound questions about the future. As more aspects of life become gamified, what will the world look like if reality itself begins to resemble a game? McGonigal's vision asks us to imagine a world where the mechanics of gaming, cooperation, goal setting, and clarity of purpose are embedded in how we live and interact. Will that future be more meaningful, more hopeful, more real? Or are we simply retreating from a reality we've given up on fixing?